If you're in grad school to become a psychotherapist and you feel like you already need to know your niche, let me stop you right there. Some of my classmates already know they want to work with DBT or in schools or with vets. And you might be sitting there thinking, I just want to survive the quarter and find my practicum placement. Totally fair. In this episode, I'm talking about how it's totally okay not to know your niche right away, how it can evolve, and how rushing the process might actually slow your progress. Dear future therapist, I'm Gabriella and welcome to my YouTube channel. So as most of you already know, I'm a full-time grad student enrolled in a clinical mental health counseling program. And by the time this video airs, I will probably be in my fourth quarter. So when I first applied to my master's program, I was actually looking at specialty programs because I had decided that I already knew what my niche was and I wanted to find a program that catered to that particular niche. And for me, it was working with the Latino population and or artists, actors, and aspiring artists. Low-key, who I was in a former life. As a Mexican-American former actor, I wanted to cater to the population that I had the most familiarity with. Of course, that was long before I considered things like modalities or settings or types of disorders or traumas. All things that come into play when you're figuring out what your niche is as a psychotherapist. Do I want to work at a community mental health agency? Do I want to work with sex trafficking victims? Or is it more important that I'm working with a specific modality like DBT or CBT or EMDR? There's a lot of acronyms. So while I think it can be great and even really important to have that initial passion or enthusiasm for working with a specific population or specific modality, you don't actually have to know your niche in grad school, especially if you're getting a master's in clinical studies, as opposed to getting a PhD or a PsyD, which might actually become more focused over a period of time. But for most therapists, it can take years of experience to figure out what fits. And that's probably been one of the biggest realizations for me, that I didn't have to have it all figured out coming in, and that grad school is actually the best time to get knowledge and experience in a lot of different types of modalities, populations, and settings to figure out what you gravitate towards most. Probably the number one question that people ask me when I tell them I'm going to grad school for psychology is what I want to specialize in or who I want to work with. And I typically answer the same way every time. I don't know what I don't know. So until I'm actually in practicum getting that clinical experience, I won't really know what types of populations I truly enjoy working with or not. Since coming into grad school with some pretty specific ideas of who I wanted to work with and in what setting, I have come to recognize that grad school is really an exploration phase. And in this exploration phase, you get to explore things like working with different populations, working in different settings, and studying different modalities. Throughout this phase, I try to ask myself things like, what energizes me, what drains me, and who do I feel drawn to support? And the answers to those questions have surprisingly evolved significantly over the course of just 3 to 4 quarters into grad school. It's all about allowing yourself the permission to be curious over the pressure to commit. This is your sampler platter era. You get to try all the dips before committing to that Costco-sized tub of salsa. Except in this case, that salsa might be working with children. And do you really want to be eating children for the rest of your career? Maybe, maybe not. And here's one of the biggest realizations that I had regarding finding your niche in grad school, is that most therapists don't get certified in a specific modality until after they graduate. So that could be something like EMDR or somatic experiencing, IFS or Gottman. You might also specialize in certain populations after, like LGBTQ plus clients or people with chronic illness or victims of IPV. A lot of these things require things like continued education, supervision, because there's simply not enough time to get into the depths of what a lot of these specializations and modalities require while you're in grad school. Your professors will have specializations in a variety of modalities and populations. So the idea is you'll get enough of an exposure to a lot of different things, and then after graduation, you can narrow it down and figure out what you want to hone in on. Now, this idea that you can learn a little bit about a lot of different things in grad school can be fun or frustrating, depending on the way you look at it. For me, initially, it was so eye-opening to be exposed to so many different theories, so many different modalities, so many different techniques. But at the same time, once I started to hone in on the things that I gravitate towards, I really wanted to take a deeper dive into those specific modalities. Now, You do have to consider that when you are in a grad school program, a lot of the development and evolution that you do as a therapist is really going to be up to you. So I'm talking about researching the populations and modalities that really speak to you on your own time. In my cohort, for example, we've already compiled an Excel spreadsheet of books that have been recommended to us by our professors that pertain to specific modalities or specific populations or specific types of trauma. And the good news about that is that if you generally have a passion for psychology like I do, then a lot of this reading can actually be fun or things that you would naturally pick up regardless of it being recommended by a professor. Books like The Gift of Therapy or The Body Keeps a Score. So hopefully there's a lot of crossover there. I also kind of like to rethink the word niche. Like instead of asking, what is my niche as a psychotherapist, try asking instead, what stories stick with me after a class or a session or a case study? What themes keep showing up for me? Or just what problems do I feel most passionate about helping with? I may have touched on this earlier, but it's okay if your niche isn't a specific population. It can be an issue, a lens, or a modality, and it can be fluid. An issue might be something like grief, transitions, or eating disorders. A lens might be social justice, or feminist, or multicultural. And your niche isn't a forever tattoo. It's gonna evolve as you do. So as I've worked my way through grad school, I've learned to be a lot less rigid with my expectations. I definitely went in with a very specific idea of how I wanted to brand myself as a therapist. And now I'm so much more chill with all that shit. I was very close to choosing my grad school program based on a specialization that they offered. And I'm really glad I didn't, because that program was a lot more expensive. And I realized that that specialization was not something that was really essential to my learning at all. And that it would be something that I would inevitably be exposed to in pretty much any program that I went to. I also low-key think it's a way for some of these grad schools to sell you on something that maybe you don't really need, but that's just my opinion. So to each their own. In my first quarter of grad school, I really gravitated towards a psychodynamic and existential approach. And while those are still two modalities that really speak to my personal worldview, throughout my research and learning, I've realized how much CBT comes up as an evidence-based approach when it comes to working with a lot of different trauma-based populations. And so I've slowly started incorporating CBT into my overall therapeutic framework in terms of tools and skills I want to build on as I head into practicum and beyond. Not to mention, there are just certain populations I will want to work with where an existential or psychodynamic approach might not be the best suited for that particular population. So having a few tools in your toolkit is always going to be necessary as a therapist, and is another reason why you shouldn't feel so much pressure to pigeonhole yourself into a specific niche, especially so early on in your career. The moral of the story, grad school is a great opportunity to sow your therapeutic oats and try a little bit of everything before you feel the need to commit. Enjoy the luxury of time while you have it, and enjoy using the process of elimination. Find out what works and what doesn't work for the populations you want to work with. You can also talk to your professors, other therapists, or students who have begun their clinical training to get insight into what their experiences have been like. So to all my future therapists who are in grad school right now, or for anyone thinking about becoming a psychotherapist, do you feel pressure to know your niche, or have you already found it, and how did you land on it? Drop it in the comments. Dear future therapists, you are not a finished product. You are a walking, talking work in progress, and that's exactly where you're supposed to be. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in our next session.